Gerbėmieji.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's a pleasure to introduce to you the old friend of Lithuania and old friend of Lithuania's freedom, Luke de Pulford, who is co-founder of various human rights organizations. I have Googled quite a lot today, and he has received an award from the Pope of Rome, a memorandum, for his fight against modern slavery, and he is a well-known fighter against genocide, and he is a well-known fighter for the freedom of Hong Kong. Dalyvauja and I are also working for the same cause. Laurynas and Dalyvauja were the first persons to be included into the Interparliamentary Alliance on China. The alliance is a global organization that brings together major and most influential and most important human rights advocates from 3 countries. The objective of this press conference to introduce to the listeners the organization itself, because we know this organization because of our joint statement. I remember following the visit of Macron to China. I remember the criticism on our part was rather voiced, but unfortunately still very few people know about that organization. It sometimes seems that only Dalyvauja and me know of what we are doing. Sometimes people think that we do too much when it comes to China. But look, we would be very happy if you could tell about the organization itself, about the objective, the mission of the organization, and the role of Lithuania. And after that, I will ask Dalyvauja, in my role, in my capacity as moderator of this conference, to tell us why this political unity is very important. So the floor is yours. Luke.
Thank you very much indeed, Žygis, and to Dalyvauja, and it's a great privilege and pleasure to be back in Vilnius. There are a few things to say about the Interparliamentary Alliance on China, IPAC. The most important is that we exist to show that the challenges posed by the People's Republic of China are beyond party politics and are beyond national boundaries. The very existence of this network, which is now well over 300 politicians in 32 countries, is testament to that fact. We have members from the German Greens to the US Republicans to New Zealand Labour to the Japanese LDP to now, as of yesterday, the South Korean opposition. This is an exceptionally broad alliance unified by a pretty simple principle, which is we stand and we must defend the international rules-based order, which is under pressure like never before as a result of the rise of the People's Republic of China and the behavior of Beijing. A few things I'd like to say about Lithuania. And I really want to underline this because I know that the domestic debates here around China and its behavior and Lithuanian policy towards China have been difficult. They're difficult everywhere. But I want to say this to the Seimas, I want to say this to anybody who is listening. The world is looking to Lithuania for leadership on China. The position taken over here has drawn admiration from around the world, and it also has enabled other countries to act. So it's true, and we need to be honest about it. In the past year, there has been a pivot back towards engagement with China across the Five Eyes and some global democracies. And it's likely to make you feel, and some other democracies like Czechia, Taiwan, who have taken a stronger approach, it's likely to make you feel more isolated. And that might result in pressure upon you, both from the perspective of your constituencies, your local population, and from the international diplomatic community. But this reflects very short-term thinking. For many reasons, the model of uncritical engagement with Beijing is unsustainable. It cannot continue. Those who believe that they can gain short-term economic advantage by pressing for deeper ties, trading ties now, will pay for it in the future. And I want to give you two very brief reasons for this, which underscore the prescience and importance of the Lithuanian position, and they are these. First, Taiwan. Forget about the possibility of a kinetic conflict around Taiwan and think for a moment conservatively. If there is a blockade around Taiwan, which is something which has been effectively committed to from Beijing, the conservative estimates are that the economic damage will be around $3 trillion in the first year, worsening over time. I'm going to emphasize here, this is conservative. Nearly 90% of the world's large shipping containers pass through the Taiwan Strait every year, at least once. 95% of the world's advanced chips come from Taiwan, etc., etc. The list goes on. No country will be able to avoid the economic impact of a blockade of Taiwan, to the extent that it will make Putin's illegal invasion of Ukraine and the resulting inflation look like a mild headache in comparison. So that's the first reason, Taiwan. The second is the de-risking agenda and human rights due diligence. This is an inexorable trend. This is a trend which will only continue. We are moving more and more towards supply chain transparency, towards de-risked supply chains and sourcing. And if we demand better standards of our businesses, it is going to make it harder and harder for Western-based businesses or those based in democracies to continue to source from China. That is a trend which we cannot ignore. I could go on, but put those two things together, the possibility, the very realistic possibility that there may be an incident in the Taiwan Strait and the de-risking agenda. And what does that tell you? It tells you that it is short-term foreign policy to try to seek deeper trading ties, to engage uncritically with a state which is going to fall foul of both of these things in coming years. So I could go into them in more detail, but I just wanted to underline those to say, look, Lithuania, your position will be proven right. And your leadership is setting the standard around this for not only the rest of Europe, but the rest of the democratic world. So my message, Žygis, would be, yes, IPAC is an important initiative. Lithuania has always held a very important position within IPAC, setting standards around China policy. But I think the key point for you domestically, if I may speak so boldly as somebody from the UK, would be hold the line on China, you will be proven right. Thank you.
Ačiū labai, Luke.
Thank you very much, Mr. de Pulford. I'll come back to you later on, but now I'd like to give the floor to Ms. Dovilė Šakalienė. I wonder whether there were any resolutions that we have voted differently. I guess not. We have initiated the first hearings when it comes to the genocide of Uyghurs and for the sanctions to China. Well, that was the case, and I guess during this time of office, Dovilė was the key person that was impacted severely by the sanctions of China. Well, you were the co-founder of this alliance. I came late. I joined this alliance later. So why do you think the unity is very important? And do you think we will be able to achieve this unity in respect to China? Maybe this is the question of future. We do feel the consequences ourselves, but do you think we will be able to maintain this unity? Well, I do agree that this is a question that we have a united opinion on. This matter is a matter of national security and defense. Therefore, when we talk about threats posed by China, the process is gaining significance, and the things that have been mentioned by our colleague, Mr. Luke de Pulford, and the issue of Taiwan, irrespective of how this process will start, the world agrees that this threat is approaching, and you've heard the price that the world will have to pay for that. He mentioned the economic price, let alone the humanitarian price. But I do agree that China, just like Russia, is planning its imperial expansion. When it comes to Taiwan, and what is also very important for us, it is very important to understand how widely, broadly, geopolitically, China is expanding its pressure on expanding authoritarian methods. When it comes to preparedness to attack Taiwan, as far as I know, this has been enshrined in strategic documents, which means that there is already a platform in place, that such attack is already in strategic communication documents, as well as in the documents of the Chinese Communist Party, as well as in other legislation of the PRC. So Chinese plan not the joining of Taiwan, but rather an invasion of Taiwan. Now, what is happening now, what we see is that China is increasingly cooperating with the Russian Federation. But we do understand that China will, well, as I can say, will consume Russia in this very process, and it will have negative consequences on the Russian Federation itself. China, on a commercial basis, is providing support to Russia. Well, we've seen this for consecutive years already, and the support is provided not only in energy resources, but also in China also provides military support as well. Moreover, there are meetings between President Putin and Xi Jinping. The meetings are becoming more often. This means that the military support will be provided on the basis of political support, and this we face yet another threat. We know that Xi Jinping and Putin met more than 40 times. Most probably, this number is double the time the meetings Mr. Putin had with India. When it comes to understanding the threats, we have to maintain our unity. I'm very happy that the European Union understood the threats much earlier than the United States. Decoupling for many countries from China and from Russia is too difficult and virtually impossible. The dependency coefficient also means that countries are dependent on China's certain technologies, on certain businesses that have been moved to China. We also know that China has also interfered quite a lot into political decision-making. Therefore, decoupling for majority of countries would be very difficult, because in the recent 20 years, there was quite a lot of influence on the part of China and Russia. Now, when it comes to de-risking strategy, it is becoming even more intense, especially in the areas that are related to security and defense, protection of critical infrastructure. So the European Union is engaged quite intensely in that, because the EU has realized the risk posed by China as being a social Democrat, I think that maybe some things could have been done in a different way, but a clear understanding of threats, clear strategies should be understood in the same way. Therefore, I'm going to put my every effort to ensure that the threats are understood in the same way. The Lithuanian government, both the current one and the present one, should be engaging in the same work. Of course, it is very difficult to forecast what government we will have in a year's time. But most probably you remember when Macron went to China and saluted the parade in China. He saluted the armed forces of that was led by Chinese Communist Party, and this Communist Party has been undertaking in the activities of genocide of the Uyghurs, and the United Nations Commissar said that there are very obvious violations of human rights and genocide. So, unfortunately, only very few countries, including Lithuania, condemned such act. The message is very clear to Macron that he should not be speaking on behalf of the European Union, and the support of non-democratic regimes pose a threat to democratic regimes. The number of wars is increasing globally, unfortunately, and we are living in a most complex geopolitical environment, unprecedented that we have not seen for 70 years. So I hope that the Interparliamentary Alliance on China that brings together a number of countries and a number of parliaments will contribute to the security of Lithuania, to the security of the European Union, NATO, and global security. Thank you, Ms. Šakalienė. I have a question to Mr. Luke de Pulford. Well, you mentioned that Macron said that Taiwan is not a problem of Europe. We also hear that many Republicans say that Ukraine is not a European problem. Well, maybe some say that Israel is not our problem, or vice versa. Well, I don't know, but it seems to me that when Beijing and Moscow and Iran and other various terrorist organizations such as Hamas and Hezbollah meet together. Well, when I was in those kibbutz where our brothers and sisters, Israelis, were killed, we see that Russia, Iran and North Korea have provided weapons to those terrorist organizations. So it seems that North Korea has also provided weapons with the agreement of China. So can we, in the IPAC framework, maybe in other frameworks as well, to try and to see the entire picture, because I'm afraid we see a very divided picture. Dalyvauja and I were fighting for accepting Ukraine to NATO because we thought that this might stop and deter both Russia and China. We failed to convince America on that. Maybe we will try convince Washington on some of the issues. Well, maybe in Washington summit, which might be the last in the term of office of Democrats, will be this breaking point. Because in Vilnius we have also met leaders of Indo-Pacific region. Maybe we can create a global NATO, but I don't like that autocracies are moving forward and they are killing the people together. Maybe well, it seems that those autocrats are dividing us. And, well, America, United Kingdom are bigger countries. So maybe the United Kingdom specifically could do its role. Americans say that the British sees us through different eyes. Maybe it's the United Kingdom that can unite us against this evil, or maybe it's just Lithuanians who think that such axes exist. Thank you.
Much. There's so much to say on this. I think it is true that this developing alliance of autocracies does make it much more difficult to challenge, well, to address the challenge in an isolated way, in a way that tries to identify one particular country, like we do within the Interparliamentary Alliance on China. This is a big and developing issue. Let's just concentrate for a moment on what China's support for Russia really has meant. This is something which is not widely known, not widely publicized. Many people don't know, for example, that after the invasion, large-scale commodity purchases between China and Russia increased hugely to around $200 billion. Financial instruments were created, which helped Russia to sell via the yuan. Gunpowder, helicopter ports, jet fighter parts, navigation equipment, jamming technology, thermal, optical sights, drones, bulletproof vests, the list goes on and on of dual-use goods that have been sold by China to Russia. It is very hard to sustain the notion that China has not been supporting Putin's illegal war in Ukraine. And we cannot consider one without considering the other. I think that is true. For our purposes, we have to be clear. The thing that unites this group is their concern with China. And so if they're concerned with China, they ought to be concerned with China's support for illegal warfare in other jurisdictions. So naturally, within IPAC, we've been willing to talk about that. But I think you raise a very important point. How are we going to address the increasing interconnectedness of the autocratic world? There's no simple answer to that. In terms of the United Kingdom's role, especially since leaving the European Union, I think geopolitically the United Kingdom is important, has always been. Part of the answer to the, we can call it the Macron fallacy, the notion that Taiwan doesn't matter to us, or that China, or the rise of China is just a US problem, or this is a battle of two global hegemons and we don't want any part of that. The solution to that is to emphasize that the rise of the PRC and Beijing's behavior is a domestic policy problem in every country of the world, made worse and exacerbated by their developing links with other autocracies. We have to be willing to confront these things as a domestic policy problem as well as a foreign policy problem. And the UK can play a part in that, because the UK is not within the EU bloc in the same way anymore, because it's not the United States, and because geopolitically and because of its history, it has the ability to speak with some independence and credibility about these issues. I regret, and I feel I'm able to say this as a British person, that we are not currently doing so. In fact, the UK at the moment is trying to adopt a posture of greater trade and cooperation with China in a way which, at the very least, betrays the agreements that we held with Beijing over Hong Kong, and I think risks betraying our human rights commitments regarding the treatment of Uyghurs and others. So, you know, we've got a problem there too. We all need to work to push our governments to adopt a more realistic line, a more forward-thinking, longer-term line when it comes to engagement with the PRC. And yes, that's the case with the UK as much as anywhere else. Over to you.
Well, the United Kingdom has indeed been, in our region, the country that has seen the situation from a wider perspective. We were therefore, Dalyvauja and I were very happy when the European Commission talked about the recommendations to start negotiations with Ukraine on its accession to the European Union. Unfortunately, the United Kingdom is not able to engage in those negotiations But, well, who knows what will happen in the future, because we know that Norway is planning to come back to initiate the question. But as far as I know, at the Washington NATO summit, we will try to move forward with the topic of Ukraine and with the engagement into much wider Indo-Pacific region. I have the last question to Ms. Šakalienė. If I am not mistaken, you were in Taiwan together with a committee on national security and defense of the Lithuanian parliament. Well, we have here a representative from the Taiwanese representation in the press conference. Some say that our cooperation with Taiwan is based on economic basis, but now when it comes to hybrid threats, I heard that the Taiwanese foreign minister came to Lithuania to learn from us how to resist those cyber threats, how to fight disinformation and propaganda. I've seen myself in Taiwan how China and Russia are working hand in hand to distribute false information. So now, Dovilė, do you think we would be able to engage the topic of Indo-Pacific region so that everyone could see a broader view, the one that we are trying to advocate for? Well, indeed, cooperation in the area of security and defense is in place. It is increasing. I've been on a visit to Taiwan at the beginning of January this year. I believe that the visit was very useful. We were very happy with the results achieved. We wanted to share the experience. We wanted to share our plans when it comes to joint activities, both at the level of technological solutions as well as to ideological ones. As you have rightly mentioned, Žygimantas, cooperation in the context of cyber warfare and information warfare, we have made every effort to train our society to decipher this information, to identify the information, false information that comes from Russia. This was very useful, and the cooperation with Taiwan is very useful as well, because Taiwan has technologies to help us fight the cyber incidents in the areas of national security, defense, and energy security. We have to ensure that we recognize the algorithms. Another area is universal defense, public defense, the principle of total defense. That is very relevant for Taiwan as well. We talked about this principle during the meeting. We are trying to prepare our society. In some areas we have advanced quite a lot. We have been engaged in building motivation, in ensuring planning. Taiwanese have also done a lot in the tactic level. They have some algorithms in place, how their ministries are engaged. They currently have very detailed planning as to how support will be provided to the residents of Taiwan, including the support for them to evacuate, and so on and so forth. So we can learn a lot from Taiwan. Well, as far as I know, they have a lot of planes, aircrafts on the island, and this number is much higher than that in Lithuania. What is also very important to mention is that the countries that were very cautious or neutral with regard to China, so their approach towards China has changed. see that the shift of the U.S. towards the Indo-Pacific region and Asia is a very systematic one, and it's a long-term one. We have to learn from the United States as well. You talked about Russia, Iran, North Korea and Iran bloc, but we also have to think about the British, American, European Union bloc. Now, when it comes to the rules of the games, we are playing again according to the rules by the United States. Well, now we have to understand one thing. Living at the front line, we have to understand what we have to do, because our wrong solutions will pose a threat to our freedom. Thank you, Dovilė. Thank you, Mr. Luke de Pulford. We wanted to show that both Dovilė and I are united, but that international community is also united. And look, you are going to participate in the conference on the future of democracy. And well, I consider myself and Lithuanian, as well as Latvian and Estonian Foreign Affairs Committee chairman, as three musketeers. We believe that Estonia will implement its decision to have a Taiwanese representation in Estonia. So thank you very much, and we are moving forward with our works.